Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm joined by Gemma Mitchell, co-host of the Australian Finance podcast, money coach and author of the soon-to-be-released The Money Reset. Gemma's work is all about what happens after life throws you a curveball. So whether that be divorce, burnout, business setbacks, how to find your feet financially and emotionally. And we're here talking about her 12-step reset, why she believes that your personal and business finances are never really separate, and the mindset shifts that can turn what feels like a setback into a slingshot. So let's get into it. Gemma, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I haven't been on this side on the business podcast yet.
I know, it's nice. We cross paths when you're down in the Melbourne office, but we have also crossed paths on the finance podcast. It's nice to have you on the business one.
Yes, thank you.
So, Gemma, before we dive into the money reset and all of your fantastic work, I'm really curious to know what the spark was, or like the aha moment, or perhaps even like, was there like a really pivotal sort of challenge in your early career that made you go, yes, this is what I want to be doing. I want to be helping people navigate finances.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it is something that I think about all the time. Like, how did this start? But if I'm honest, I think I was always pretty money obsessed from a very young age. So even as a child, I had big goals and I knew that money was going to be the key to achieving them. So I kind of always just remember having a budget, whether it was saving money and knowing what I was going to spend it on. So I had horses growing up and that is expensive. So I was always saving money and I'd have the catalogs on what tack gear, like horse gear that I needed and how it was going to take me to save it and so I was just always kind of planning. So naturally, I think I was always going to work in finance. And then out of school, started working for a bank and then I went overseas. And when I came back, I went back into banking. And I remember kind of going, yep, this is where I want to be, but I don't want to be a teller forever. And I kind of saw two career paths outside like the branch land. And it was, you could be a mortgage broker or like a lender. So you could give people money, help people get loans, or you could do financial planning. They were the two kind of arms that I kind of went, yeah, they're my options. And when it came down to it, I was like, I want to plan, like I want to help people plan their money and not necessarily get them into debt, but have control over their whole wealth and help them with that aspect. So financial planning was pretty clear from there on. And I just absolutely loved it. But fast forward like 15 years, I was so over it and burnt out. And I don't think financial planning actually was what I thought it was. And I just kind of felt like, oh, there's nothing else for me to do. I've got this skill. I could probably be a financial advisor forever or manage financial advisors. And the thought of that was terrifying. So I took a career break just to like some personal stuff was going on. And I was just like, I just need a break from this. Took a career break. And my husband at the time, spoiler, ex-husband, he was always in my ear like, oh, people are always talking to you about money and, want to come over for a cup of tea and ask you general stuff like, this is a business. And I was like, it's not a business. Like there's financial planning or there's lending or there's this, like, that's not a service. And he was kind of just at me. And then, money coaching came in and that's where I sit now, that general education space, which wasn't really a thing 5 years ago. And that's how I came to write a book, be a money coach and work with the whole Rask team. So yeah, pretty big, shift, but I think it was always what I was probably going to be doing.
Yeah, it sounds like, obviously, like we've spoken before and we're in the office together and those kinds of things. But I feel like the way that you do explain things, the way that you talk, you're very like natural, you're very like warming to speak to. So I can imagine that when someone and if someone comes to you and they have those, turbulent, like you said, curveballs that happen in life, whether it's redundancy or divorce or whatever it might be, to have someone like you that not only can like nurture them through the process, but can guide them and give them that really supportive educational kind of support, and guidance is so important. So, sounds like it's definitely the right career.
Yeah, I think I found my calling.
Yes, I think so. So your book is called The Money Reset. And I've got a bit of an idea, but where did the idea come from and like how much of it is like your own story?
Yeah, so the money reset was I've always helped clients get back to basics, right? And like so much of what I do and what I believe is you need to have the foundations right. Like you can have the best financial plan in the world, the best investment strategy, but if you don't have all the day-to-day stuff and the basic financial stuff sorted, it's just not going to work. Like from your mindset, your goals, your day-to-day like habits, all of that is so important. But as a financial advisor, we always kind of focused on the big stuff and be like, why are these clients sticking to this plan? It's the best. So I had always worked in coaching on those foundational stuff. And a lot of the time I'd worked with people that did big, like were going through big transitions, whether it was divorce, maybe loss of a spouse, job loss, or just an internal awakening, like, what am I doing with my money? Like maybe it's I earn great money, but I've got like, what have I got to show for it? Or just something. And I'm like, you need to get back to basics. So the money reset was something that I always kind of practiced, but how it came about being actually a book is I went through a divorce and obviously I was with this person for 15, nearly 18 years. So very entangled financially, financial advisor, I've got complicated strategies and structures. And I was just put in a tailspin and I was like, how does everybody else do this? If I've got this financial knowledge, they don't, and I'm finding it so hard. And what it came down to is I had all the theory on how you do it and what you do and when, but the emotional side of it was so hard to do. And that's where I was like, right, my creative outlet's going to be doing this book because can't really control a lot of the things happening in my divorce and where my finances are going to land. So I just put everything into kind of this book. It was a how-to just for divorce, but it's evolved now. And it was really just me going through the motions of my reset and getting back to basics. And it, it can work for a single couple, anybody. But yeah, it was really about I need to reset and get back to basics. And I know all the struggles and I know all the theory and how do I make this as simple as possible? And so, yeah, I put it into a book called The Money Reset, and it's in 12 steps. And it's really just about how do you get back to the foundations of every area from like, what is the first thing you do? And then goal setting, mindset, your habits, then to, well, what do you do with what levers are available for you to then build wealth? Is it paying off debt? Is it earning more? Is it, starting a business? Is it you need to spend less? But it's all these different levers that you then put into it. And then the final bit of it is, cool, you've got the basics sorted. Now, how do you build wealth and what's going to be your lever in the wealth building thing? So it's 12 simple steps. When you read the book, you can jump around to different chapters. You might go, actually, I got all that sorted. I'm just really worried about my super. I'm going to go that chapter. Or you might be like, no, my super's great. I'm worried about this one. I'm going to jump to that one. So it's kind of just like your guide. You don't have to do it in the roadmap that it's intended, but I just hope that it's people going, I know I need help and I want to do it as simple as possible. And there's lots of emotional things that are holding me back as well and making this way more complicated than it would usually be. So yeah, the resource that is made for them is the money reset.
Wow. I mean, and you're so right in the sense of like emotions play such a huge part in any kind of decision that we're making, but particularly in, your situation and people that have gone through similar situations, you might have that knowledge, but when that emotional kind of cloud comes in, it makes it so difficult. And it sounds like the book that you've created and the steps are quite general, but they're also quite tailored in the same way that you can really say, okay, this is exactly what I'm struggling with and this is the really core component of my financial portfolio that I'm concerned with. This is where I'm going to focus first. This is where I'm going to invest my energy right now. So it's fantastic. I want to touch on, you kind of said a couple of times, like getting back to the basics for people that might be in a very early stage kind of their financial journey. What do you define as those basics?
So when I talk about basics, it's about the foundation stuff, like, well, knowing your starting point. So what do you like? Do it. Like one chapter is called stock take, and it's like, what do you own? What do you owe? Like basic stuff now, because it's like, and I keep saying basic, but it is. in a concept, but doing it, and actually from a like an emotional perspective, but also as the actual activity, like actually doing it is quite difficult. So it's just about, going, well, this is a step that needs to be done in your foundation. So let's look at where you are, acknowledge it, and then acknowledge all the feelings, whether they're guilt, shame, excitement. Like and they're probably, if you're anything like me, that they change daily. So it's just kind of like getting back to doing that stock take, acknowledging where you are. Like maybe there's some things that you stuffed up that got you here. Like, did you put a Europe trip on a credit card and stuff? But there's a difference between taking responsibility and like letting go of guilt and things. Like, we can move forwards without constantly kicking ourselves about something that we're not proud of. Yeah, and it just depends on the situation. So that's kind of in the book as well, the stock take. And then one of the big things about when I say about getting back to basics as well is just like, well, what are you earning? What are your expenses? That again kind of goes with the stock take on, well, what are your assets and what do you owe? And then a really big one for people going through a transition is, I think you need to clear the decks with your goals and start from scratch, because we have our lives, we build up these, whether they're society's kind of expectations or our own family culture, whatever it is, we have these goals, and often we don't actually think if they're actually our goals. We're just going through the motions. So it's about kind of going, right, what do I actually want life to look like, and why? And why is that important to me? And that's a really big step on getting back to basics, is just get rid of all of that. And my book goes through how hard that actually is and how hard it was for me, and my personal stories like are in there. Like, I'm not a homeowner at the moment. Like, I don't live in a house that I own. And that was a huge shift to me from where I've been previously. And that was a big, process of, and it felt like guilt, like failure and guilt for the kids, and well, like a bit of embarrassment at some points. Like, I'd say, oh yeah, it's just a rental, like, and stuff like that. Like, it's so interesting to see how, when you have to let go of goals and different positions that we're in, how your natural responses are. So yeah, it's a bit of a stock take on all of that kind of stuff as well. But yeah, letting go of the goals and then going, right, this is my opportunity to go, what do I want life to look like, and how am I going to do it on my terms?
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's I can imagine that would be really difficult as well, and probably with some of the clients that you work with, is reassessing those goals, because like you said, there are a lot of there's a lot of societal pressure in terms of owning a house. It's kind of something, it's kind of the quote unquote Australian American dream, whatever we talk about. And it's like, that is something that a lot of people package into again, quote unquote success. And so I think it's an interesting, and it would be quite challenging to kind of confront those realities and be like, well, do I actually want this? Is this just something that like is ingrained in me from society or parents or other generations? And how, I guess, going back to your clients, how does that conversation kind of evolve? I imagine there's quite a lot of emotion involved in that too.
There really is, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. So the clients that I see, I generally do like one-off sessions. So it's more identifying things and then giving them work to go away and do. And in the book, it actually has lots of worksheets, like little thought-provoking stuff through it. So it's an activity that you have to like keep coming back to. But this is perfect timing to be recording this podcast, because I had what I would call a quick spiral yesterday. So so I'm a finance professional, right? I do this all day, every day. Yesterday, I was having a moment and I was just like, I need to own a house. Why am I doing this? Like, it's kind of like get distracted with shiny things. I'm like, everybody else is doing it this way, but I just needed to come back to, yes, I know that that's what you always wanted, and you thought you wanted it for X, Y, and Z, but remember, you're on this path because this, and this makes sense for you right now. So I had to like go back and ground myself, and even my friends now, like, yeah. And so it still happens. It's never a one and done. Like, I wish it was. I wish I could say, you'll make a decision on your new life and then you'd be set. Like, yeah, there's things that still, I'm 2.5, nearly 3 years out of my divorce. So I haven't lived in that family home the whole time. I have to go there every like couple of times a week to pick up the kids or whatever. And I'd say 9 out of 10 times I'm totally fine. And then occasionally I just feel like, that was my dream house. And it like, it's not linear. It's not like this growth that you just go, oh yeah, I'm set now because I've got my new goals and I've got my new life. No, it's the quick spirals still happen. So you've got to know really clearly why your goals, your values are so important to you, because when those little spirals happen, you can snap out of them pretty quick and come back to why you're doing what you're doing. But another thing I do with clients is I make sure everything that we're doing, and I talk about it in the book, is not necessarily focused on financial freedom as the ultimate goal and wealth. It's financial flexibility, so that if that plan no longer works, you're still moving forward, but you can pivot at any time and you're not locking yourself into something that potentially, while you're going through all these emotional challenges, that you might want to get out of when you come out the other side of this emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, that's huge. I don't think I've never heard financial flexibility before, but I think it's massive. I think it's something that, like you said, that financial freedom is what a lot of people work towards, whether they've accurately defined what that looks like for them personally. But I think financial flexibility, to me, it just sounds like more realistic, but also who we are when we're 20 is different to who we are when we're 30, when we're 40, when we're 50. And so you need to be able to be flexible. And like you said, there's things that come up in life and curveballs that come up that when you're 25 or you're 30 and you're doing your planning for your retirement, you don't think that, your business is going to fail or you're going to get divorced or, you might lose a spouse, like you said. And so to kind of be stuck in a box is kind of scary.
Yeah, and that's what can happen, when people say, for example, fight for the family home, and then they have a mortgage that maybe is above their capacity, or they just haven't really dived into why they want that so badly, and then they're in a place where they're actually not maybe safe or comfortable, or doesn't align with the life and the goals that they want. So we kind of just, spend a bit of time in the book, but also when I coach people on going, okay, cool, it's okay to have that goal, but let's dive into why. And if you come out the other side of it and it's still your goal, that is amazing. That's great. Let's make it happen. But if not, let's go what else could be, because there's so many ways to live your life. There's so many ways to earn income, build wealth, that we don't have to do what we've always done. But it's we tend to, right? We tend to be creatures of habit and go, well, that's what we were always doing. That was my path, so I'm going to make sure I keep doing it that way. And it's a great time when stuff's gone pear-shaped, when you've had one of these plot twists, to kind of go, right, let's reset on all of these expectations, goals, and then how I actually do the day-to-day stuff as well. The practical stuff obviously needs to underpin it all.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talk a little bit in the book about what is often a setback, or what feels like a setback is often a slingshot, if you treat it the right way, and if you treat it as a slingshot. So can you talk a little bit about that theory and what that means?
Yes. So I'm very big on, sometimes you have to go backwards before you can go forwards. And that's a slingshot, right? Like, you need to think of it like that. So potentially something has gone terribly wrong in your life, or you've had one of these awakening and you need to pull back on expenses, earning, your aspirations, some goals. Maybe travel's off the table for a year. Maybe you literally have to cut out a lot of your discretionary spending. And that feels horrible in the moment, but it might be the only lever that you have to pull. So think of it like a slingshot. I'm going backwards for this period so that I can, whatever the plan is, so I can pay off debt, so I can be in a better position, so I can reset my life, leave a toxic job, leave a toxic relationship, an unhealthy kind of, like, all of those things. Yes, it might be doing the hard yards, but you need to see it as, how is this going to propel me forwards when I'm out of it? So it's all like how you frame stuff, right? And it can feel terrible in the moment. Plus, I had to cut out so many of my life's little luxuries, and different things, and some of the goals are off the table now. But I'm okay with that, and I'm I just kind of go, okay, well, what are the things that need to stay in, and why does sacrificing these things, doing the slingshot now, where do I think that's going to get me, and is it worth it? And that's when you'll decide if, it's worth it, the trade-off of cutting those things out and feeling like you're going backwards for a year or two, or whatever it is in your time frame.
And how long, I mean, I know how long's a piece of thread, and obviously everyone is quite different. But do you find that there's quite often a general, let's go backwards for, again, for the lack of a better word, let's go backwards for 12 months, for 18 months, so we can be in a better position in 5 years' time? Is there a general kind of time frame that you or your clients work with?
There's definitely not. It really depends on why the slingshot is occurring. Like if it's for debt, it'll depend on your debt. If it's a business restructure. So I had a major business pivot this year. So my income has dropped significantly and my expenses went through the roof because I pivoted, did the book, which took so much time out of my earning capacity and was expensive. I got like coaches and different people involved. So I have gone seriously backwards in my business and earning this year, but I'm like, do you know what? I mapped it out and I was like, I think it's just for 1 year and it's going to be my slingshot because it's opening up these other income streams and it's bringing me to a different level. So with my business, it was 12 months. But yeah, you might go, it's about kind of going how far you want to go as well. Like, if yours is debt, you might do the extreme and go, well, if I cut out everything, I can be out of this in 12 months. That's worth it to me. Or you might go, no, that's not. I'd prefer to take a little bit longer and sacrifice less. But I think it's such an individual thing to work on. And the goal is just to know what your levers are, because sometimes you can't cut any more expenses. So your lever might be earning more or changing something else in your life. So it's just about identifying the levers and working out what's trade-off is worth it for you.
That education is so important. And, outside of money coaches and like obviously Rask does a lot of the education as well, it is really hard to know who to turn to, who to listen to, what advice to take. So to have someone like a money coach like yourself to actually get quite tailored, or even just in those one-off sessions, but to get quite tailored and be like, this is where you're at, here's, a plan, and this is why the plan's going to work, would be so just invaluable.
Well, the interesting thing that I notice is because I, like you, work with a lot of business owners as well. And this is a thing that they often are all over for their businesses. They're like, okay, yep, I've got to spend money here. We've got to go backwards this year because we're adding this. And it seems like a concept that we're all okay with or understand more, are better, more okay with when it's a business. But when it's our personal, it feels so much different because we have these different emotions that are attached, our safety, our security, what's society and all of that kind of stuff. These different pressures that I think that we treat it differently to a slingshot in our personal than we would in our business. And I think people need to look at them the same and kind of see your personal finances and goals as a business strategy as well. Yes, there's some more emotions in there, but the more we can take out the emotions, the easier those decisions are. So, yeah, for business owners that are doing this in their business, it's going to be a lot easier for them to be thinking of it the same way in their personal.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously there's your emotional and your rational brain, and I work primarily in like marketing, consumer psychology, and a lot of what we talk about is any initial decision is made from a reaction. It's made from that emotional response, and then you kind of need to justify it, and that's when your rational brain kicks in. And it's so hard to, as a business owner, or particularly in financial and emotional situations, to try and switch off that emotional brain and use that rational brain, because naturally it does come to us later. It's not our instinctual kind of decision-making behavior. But I mean, you spoke quite a bit about again, you work with business owners quite a lot, but what are some of those biggest like personal financial traps that you find business owners fall into?
Yes, so they're pretty common. I think in the early days of businesses being set up, potentially while they're just finding their feet and doing different things. But the most common thing that I see kind of that stitches business owners up in their personal lives is mixing the cash flow and the expenses and, not treating it like a business that is completely separate. So that's just one on the day-to-day stuff. But the major one that really worries me is when people work I've got a business, I get it, but we put everything into our business and we just, nurture it and build it up and we're so passionate about it. But it's so important that you're transferring that wealth that you're building in your business, you're transferring it into personal assets as well. So you're building wealth in your personal name outside your business, because I see so many people retire. I predominantly worked with retirees for most of my advice kind of career, and they would get to the end, they'd have these really valuable businesses, but then couldn't find someone to sell. There was an industry change. The kids didn't actually want to take it over. The new management didn't look after it like they did. But that was their whole retirement wealth plan, was in their business, when they could have been, utilizing superannuation or different things as well, just to make sure that they were diversifying a bit more outside just their business.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess going back to your book a little bit now, like you've got this 12-step plan in the book. If someone is in a financial funk and they're stuck, what are like 2 or 3 steps that you find tend to move the needle the fastest?
Yes. Okay. Well, that would be buying the book. No, shameless plug.
Obviously.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that you need to do is acknowledge where you're at. So you need to be like, how it's really easy to kind of go, oh, I know something needs to happen, but there's no urgency around it. There's no something else is always. You need to kind of sit and go, if I'm in the same position, or if I'm still feeling like this in 12 months' time, am I okay with that? And if the answer is no, then this needs to be a priority. And I would sit down, and the steps in the book are the ones that I would focus on are the stock take, where you go, right, this is everything I own. This is everything I owe. What is my starting point now? And how do I feel about that? And it's not to shame and guilt and go, oh, you could have done so much better. It's just like, right, this is my starting line. And if it is like a divorce like mine was, when I did that, it was so much worse than what it was when I was a couple, right? Like it took a big hit, but it was really empowering, because I was like, cool, okay, this is my starting line. This is mine. This is what I now have to work with. And it is now completely up to me on how I move forward. And that's like a very, very daunting thing, but also really empowering. So actually acknowledging where you're at. And then the next thing would be looking at all of your expenses and seeing if like cash flow and expenses are an issue, seeing what can cut and what can realistically be cut. And if that's not a lever to you, but you do need that higher cash flow, looking at your levers in terms of business income. And it's just about get a pen and paper and just start brainstorming things. Where can I cut expenses, right? Have I done as much as I can? Where can I increase my income? Have I done as much as I can? So they would be the 2 things that I would focus on. And then, with that, it's going to start the ball rolling with your mindset, your goals, all of that kind of stuff. But I think you actually just need to have the urgency around it and go, I'm not okay with this happening any longer. And then that should start some momentum, because it's so easy for us just to keep putting things off, right? Like there's always something else to do, but you don't want to look back in 12 months and be starting when you could have, started today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine part of that as well is, safety nets and buffers, and kind of bringing that into the conversation as well, which I think, is so common that people don't have that safety net. They don't have a buffer if things go wrong. But, I know you've spoken about it quite a bit as we've been chatting as well, is obviously there's the financial buffer that, when you talk about buffer, that's the first place that people go. But it's that psychological buffer and that psychological safety net as well. Why do you think these things aren't necessarily used or spoken about, or even just underestimated tools in money management?
Yeah, so I think it's because that's a really, really hard question. But I think most of the time we know that we need emergency funds or whatever. We've heard terms like that a lot. But if you think about any kind of holistic plan, there's so many different layers there, and we don't really I think we need to do it all ourselves, and we actually don't. So in the book, I talk a lot about your village, and your village is made up of a few different people, a few different key traits. And it's like there's a mentor, an accountability person, a cheerleader, and then your experts. But they don't have to all be the same people. Like your best friends don't have to be your mentor, your cheerleader. You know, maybe they have one job in there. Maybe you can't talk to people about a certain, you know, maybe you don't feel comfortable talking about your income to your friends, but there's a mentor in there or the professional that you can talk about that element. So I think it's just about finding who are the key people in there and what that looks like, and that it's okay to outgrow your village as well. It's okay for these people to change over time. But one of the things that I talk about a lot in it is your sleep at night test, that everything you do has to pass your sleep at night test. And how you create that is like there's some questions in there, and it should be then you have like these set questions that you go, right, every time I make a financial decision, I'm going to ask myself these 3 questions. And it's not about staying in your comfort, because not sleeping at night because you're out of your comfort zone versus you're making a decision that doesn't sit with you is a very different thing. It's just about you knowing this passes my sleep at night test. So outside just your basics, like having an emergency fund, access to stuff, it's like, well, how do you actually have this framework that you can grow and challenge yourself and not just stay in the safe? And that's the people in your village that you will appoint, and making sure that you're really clear on what passes your sleep at night test and what doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And if we can get personal, who did you find was really critical and key in your village?
Oh, that is a great question. So, I have an amazing village, but honestly, it got pretty small, and that was something I needed to do. I was in a really bad like headspace, and it was really challenging. And my group and my friendship group got really small through that period, and so there was one particular friend who you literally, Emma, would call me every single day, even if I didn't answer. And you know, some people, if you had called a few times and not answered, they'd just be like the next day, well, she never calls me back, so I'm just going to leave her. Nah, Emma has none of that boundary. She just would keep calling, be like, right, are you up? Are you working? Are you doing this? Have you gone for a walk? She was just amazing. But I identified pretty quickly that the 3 people I was leaning on, my sister, my best friend Lauren, and Emma, that I needed somebody outside them, because I wanted our friendship to not always be about my struggles. And I didn't, I wanted to have something that when I saw them, that we could just have like elements of our normal friendship. So I actually got, I was already seeing a business coach. I was seeing a psychologist. I was seeing a personal trainer, but I had all these goals with them individually, right? This fitness goal, this business goal, my psychology was important, but I kind of felt like whatever thing was going, that expert was just focused on that. And so when I couldn't do that thing because all this other stuff was unraveling in the background, it was really hard for them to understand. Like I could focus on one ball, but then all the others dropped. So I actually got rid of all of them and found one coach that could kind of do it all, even though that's not really, like, it took ages to find somebody. And it was just that they had a coaching business, but personally, they were a qualified psychologist. They were really into their fitness. I was looking at kind of my relationship with alcohol at the time. They'd got sober a year before. So it took me so long to find this person, but we just gelled and ticked all the boxes. And that was probably the biggest thing, is that I outsourced to a professional to take it off my friendships. And like a lot of my friends are in finance, so I've got all that support, but I just needed to take it to someone who had no idea, didn't know me from what was going on, and then I could keep all of those other relationships, like protect them how I wanted to. So yeah, I outsourced. I found a coach, I outsourced, and I just kept interviewing them. God, I met with so many. I just kept interviewing them and I didn't think I didn't have a list of, they must be sober, they must run a business. It just, when I met this person, I was like, you're it. And then I could get rid of all of those other things, because I couldn't afford to do it all and then have like another thing. And I felt like I was kind of throwing money against the wall because my mental health wasn't okay, or I wasn't stable enough to just stick with the plan for one of them. So I was like, right, I need to find this person. And I just kept looking until I found somebody that I was like, you are the person for me to get me through this time.
That's phenomenal. I think it's interesting because when I have spoken to other people, whether it be business owners or just friends or something, sometimes it is that external source that doesn't necessarily have all of the previous emotional ties with you and your family and your partner and is aware of like your entire existence, but can bring almost like an objective, still extremely kind of caring and nurturing, and but they're in it for kind of a different reason, I guess. Like they're in it because their goal is to help you get to a better place, and they know what your goals are and they know what levers they can help you pull. And sometimes there's that element of, not, for lack of better words, like not being dragged back into the emotional component that can sometimes happen when we're in our really close safety net of friendship group where, or family. Sometimes you kind of, I feel like when there's an external person there, you're like, I'm going to show up and I'm going to do it. And I've got someone holding me accountable and they're not going to like deal with my slack. And
Yes, that's
sometimes you can kind of
exactly
make
it.
that progress.
And I think that's a lot of the time why people come to me as a money coach is because they're like, I need somebody to, hold me to my accountable, but also see things from an outside perspective that don't know my life and all of the other bits. So yeah, it's exactly the same as a money coach or a financial advisor for your finances. It was just that I needed for my business, my mental health, all of that kind of stuff. So I was like, do you know what? I outsource, or like I people pay me to outsource their finances. Why aren't I getting this for myself? And when I did that, life got a lot easier.
I'm so glad. Well, if there is someone that's kind of like listening and is like, yep, that's me. I'm stressed. I'm stuck. I'm spinning out. I'm spiraling, as you said. What's one thing that they can do to help them, even just this week, to help them kind of feel more in control?
Yep. So pre-order the book because pre-orders really count. But what you can actually do is, and I say this to everybody, is honestly like just pick up the phone. Like if you think that there is an area of your finances or your life, so let's say for finances for this situation, it's your income, your earning, your budget, your debt. If you just identify, the main thing, it might not be all the problems, but the main thing I'm worried about is debt, or I don't know about investing or whatever it is, go, cool, who could I go to for that? Pick up the phone and call somebody and go, hey, it might not be them, but you'll get close. The more no's you get, the closer you get to the yes, right? So it might be you go, I think I need to talk to an accountant. Ring one and say, this is what I want. And they might go, oh, no, that's actually a financial advisor. And you're one step closer. So picking up the phone and just getting one step closer to who you think the professional is the best thing you can do. But Rask actually has on the website, if you don't know what to do, like they've got free courses, the podcast, they've got so many different resources, ebooks, all this different stuff. You can do financial advice. But if you're like, I don't know which one I need, which of these amazing resources, you could actually just book a 15-minute call in. They come through to me, Mitch. Sometimes you'll even get Owen. And you can go, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Is it business? Is it tax? And we'll go, oh, okay, cool. So I think if you listen to this episode, you did this free course, maybe we go, actually, you're perfect for money coaching or straight to advice for you. But just pick up the phone, book in one of those free 15-minute calls just to say, hey, I think I need some help and I don't know where to start. And somebody, we're all in this industry because we love helping people. So just find somebody to kind of go, right, I think this is my problem. This is where I want to start. Who's my next step?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And finally, I mean, like the Money Reset, the book that you've launched, is such a simple, practical way for someone to really take control and kind of get that support and advice and guidance. Where does someone buy your book?
Yeah, so it's on pre-sales now. So it comes out on the 27th of August, which is so soon. But you can buy it on Amazon and Booktopia now, and it'll just get delivered then. And I never realized how important pre-sales are, because I know that everyone always talks about them, but it's actually because depending on how many pre-sales you get, that determines if your book will be in places like Big W and bricks and mortar stores. So pre-orders are so important. So I'd be so grateful if people, but whatever. But yeah, Amazon, Booktopia, and then you can just I post heaps of the content that's in the book and all tips and stuff on my social media, which is gemmamitchell.finance. And yeah, the Rask Invest Instagram as well. I'm a millennial, so I'm not on TikTok. I don't know how to work it, but I'll be on Instagram. You can find me there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we'll put all the links in the show notes. But Gemma, thank you so much for coming on today, and thanks so much for being really honest and being vulnerable and talking about your book and explaining it. I think there's so many, like I said, so many reasons people should pick up this book, whether you're a business owner, whether you've had a curveball in life, whether you just want to kind of like sort your shit out and just like get on top of it and get on top of your finances and get on top of life, really. So thank you so much, Gemma. I really appreciate it. And it was really great chatting with you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you want to hear more from us, you can get daily videos and podcasts on Rask's YouTube channel, or if you want to enroll in a free course on investing, property, business, money, you name it, you can join over 34,000 other students and enroll in a free course on the Rask website. Simply head to www.rask.com.au and follow the prompts. Thanks for watching this Rask podcast.